Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the final installment in this Underworld franchise review and the wrap-up for the series in general for this last film here. So first off, the final entry in these films is for Underworld Blood Wars, which was 4 years after Awakening, so this one came out in 2016. Now, this one is another direct sequel. You know, it's not a prequel, and also this one also includes a Kate Beckinsale returning, as well as Theo James and Charles Dance from the previous film. And the synopsis is as follows. Vampire death dealer Selene, Kate Beckinsale, fights to end the eternal war between the Lycan clan and the vampire faction that betrayed her. Yeah, by this time, you know, there's been so much that's gone on since the first film, but basically we get a similar kind of flashback to remind us what had happened leading up to this, and in a lot of those previous installments, as well as like this catch-up of sorts to bring us up to speed with what's currently happening in this film, which is that, you know, we have Selene being hunted down, the Lycans are gaining strength, Michael is still missing, Eve is in hiding, and we get that little reminder that David has been saved by Selene's blood in a previous film, so now he can endure sunlight the way that she can. But more importantly, is that the vampires are basically losing this war, and they're on the brink of extinction, going up against these Lycans because of a new leader of the Lycans, this man by the name of Marius, who is very strong in kind of organizing them and is really gaining some ground in this war. And why Selene is being while Selene is being hunted down, we learn that it's basically because the Lycans are wanting her blood, wanting to get their hands on Eve, trying to get this extra power from that blood. And the vampires on that side hunting her down, it's because she basically killed an elder, and it gets a little bit complicated, but she's on the run is all that really matters. Now I'm going to skip some of the more spoilery kind of details here, but you know, she is eventually invited by the vampires to kind of reconnect and help them train their new group of death dealers, so maybe they can, you know, do a little bit better in this war. But of course, there are some nefarious doings here and there. They're kind of brewing in the background, and this one feels a lot like a soap opera, or as I mentioned in some of the previous videos, it reminds me a little bit of like Game of Thrones type storyline, where we have a lot of political aspects, family aspects, different lineages that are being investigated, betrayals, grasps for power, and so on. A lot going on that I really needed to pay attention to. But luckily, like some of the other installments, this one is also short, at just around 90 minutes. So while there is a lot packed in there, they do so in a way where it's pretty easy to absorb and still leaves room for a lot of action to be in there as well. And you know, there were times where I had a lot of like questions and concerns, knowing that this was the last film in the series, because I haven't heard talk of any others after it's been 8 years since the one came out. And I was really concerned about these, such as, where's Michael, where is Eve, and will this close out our story or leave us with a cliffhanger? Basically, am I going to be satisfied with this ending? And luckily, all those questions were answered. The action in this one is great. You know, we get city action, we get rural action, stuff within fortresses, we get Lycan and vamp out kind of action to go along with the guns and the hand-to-hand and big explosions and blood. So we get a lot of fun action with that. We get some simple fights, we get some highly CG-oriented fights. It really is a lot of fun. We get a lot of stuff kind of mixed in there. And the storyline in this one, it kind of opens things up a little bit more even, bringing in more history and twists and turns which are brought our way. Major betrayals and double crosses, both in the past and what's happening in this, and also a new coven being explored, which is quite different. As well as more about this war and this new Lycan character, Marius. You know, my favorite aspect of this new one, though, is this new, like, northern and, like, snowy location of another coven that we're kind of introduced to, and how that coven operates, you know, dipping into other paranormal areas aside from simply being vampires. Really brought an extra nice feel to this one. It mixed things up quite a bit. Now, it does get a bit complicated and soap opera-like for a bit, but I dealt with it pretty well, having just seen those previous 4 films within about 3 weeks. I'd seen all of them. So we do get this sense of this being the final film, a final resolution of sorts, where they could make more, but we're not really waiting for it. But with all that said, I can definitely see somebody who waited 4 years between the last film and this one is not really enjoying this one as much as the previous ones. Because you'd have to really know those films pretty well. They would have to be pretty fresh in your mind to kind of understand what's going on here and feel like it's building off of what was before it, instead of just feeling like a very separate and small, like, episodic entry. But here's where I switched to kind of more about the franchise in general, which, I mean, it's good. I mean, it's good stuff. It's not an amazing franchise, but it's definitely worth the watch. Each entry has their pros and cons. I think that it's a very ambitious storyline overall for this franchise, which had been laid out and kind of suffers a little bit being in film form. They pack so much into these that it can be hard to keep track of what's going on, who's who, and so on. Even watching all these within 3 weeks, I had a little bit of problem kind of remembering certain aspects of them. And this is actually one of the rare cases where I would actually like to see a reboot of this and in series form. Rewrite it as like a 3-season, maybe totaling 30 episodes. Like a series like that for streaming where there can be more time to develop those relationships and those characters and that storyline and that history. Lay things out, not have to rush so much per installment, and really plan out each season with a very satisfying ending to each, as well as an overall arc connecting them all, giving us a satisfying ending to a third season. But even so, this is still a franchise which is more than worth exploring. I'm not sure how I would rank them. You know, as the first one is still a great introduction to these characters, though that extended cut did run a little bit long for what they're trying to fit in there. I would still put part 3 at the bottom, simply because while it's interesting to see that history, and it helps a little bit with the overall story arc, knowing some of that, it didn't really add enough to be its own separate entry. I kind of feel like for those first 3 films, they could have maybe re-edited that to make it one longer arc where we have the flashback stuff, or we have part 3 being handled as like a flashback between 3 films instead of getting its own separate storyline that's being told in its own separate movie. But if any of that even makes any sense, I kind of rambled there. But at any rate, I'm surprised at how low the rating is for this Blood Wars entry in it, because I actually really enjoyed it and could see rewatching it one day. And all in all, it really was a lot of fun. And as far as the franchise in general, we have a very long, complicated path for these characters. We get that deviation right in the middle with part 3 being, basically one long flashback to give us some history. And we have some updated aspects in part 4 and 5, which kind of make the overall franchise more than worth checking out. And speaking of checking out, thanks for checking out this 5th entry here, and for checking out the previous 4. If you'd been checking these out since the beginning, those are all available, and there'll be links at the end and in my channel to check those out if you want to catch up. As stated in the other videos, most of these entries at the time of this video is only available on paid rental, but keep your eye out because, just bite the bullet and buy a Blu-ray set. I believe I saw this set, all 5 films, for only $20, so even if you only end up enjoying 2 or 3 of them, it's definitely worth that price. Anyways, that's all I've got for this video here and for this franchise. So now it's just deciding what the next franchise will be. Maybe the Hatchet films, I've never seen any of those. Puppet Master, I've only seen 4 out of those 12, although I do hear that the quality kind of dips after part 4. Or maybe revisit all of the Tim Burton films before this next Beetlejuice film comes out in a couple of months. But I'll need to decide, so be sure to subscribe and hit that little bell icon to get notifications for when I put that up. And I will see you in the next one.